The College Football Playoff Committee provided snubs galore on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. Josh, it was college football championship weekend, and there was a lot of really fun action that came down. The Pac-12 championship game was a lot of fun. The SEC championship game was a lot of fun. The Big 12 championship game was quite the snoozer. Thanks for nothing, Oklahoma State. But that left us wondering on Selection Sunday. I don't know if it's actually termed that or not, but where the Oklahoma Sooners might end up in all of it. There was an outside shot that they might end up in a New Year's Six Bowl, but we're left on the outside looking in. Now heading to the Alamo Bowl, we'll face the Arizona Wildcats, who we'll talk about a little bit in the second segment. But Josh, just your early reaction to Oklahoma not making it into a New Year's Six Bowl, instead the committee going with Penn State, Ole Miss, and Missouri.
I think Oklahoma was deserving of a New Year's Six bowl game by virtue of obviously their 10 wins, the fact that really the Kansas and Oklahoma State games, Oklahoma's not far away from being a 12-0 team playing for a Big 12 championship, trying to sweep Texas and get into the college football playoff. So we can look at a bunch of different metrics. Obviously, defensively, I would understand if the committee down the stretch was less than enthused about some of the defense they saw from Oklahoma at times. So OU didn't put its best foot forward in that regard. But I think for me, I just come back to with Mizzou, with Ole Miss, Penn State, OU's got the best win of anybody. If you think that highly of Texas, and I don't blame the committee for thinking highly of Texas, the way the Longhorns are playing right now in their body of work with a win over Alabama. I don't understand how Oklahoma gets left out in favor of the teams that they got left out for. Oklahoma obviously didn't do itself any favors again, coming down the home stretch with the defense and, again, by losing a couple of games. Win one more game, and guess what? You're going to the Big 12 championship, and probably you're in the New Year's Six under that scenario, but it didn't work out that way for Oklahoma. So you played the cards you were dealt, and Oklahoma, I guess, as much as I say all of this, I think probably I'm less upset about it maybe than I think I get to read that the Oklahoma fan base is, John, because to me, I do come from a little bit of the line of thinking of Oklahoma has itself to blame for not winning one more game against either Kansas or Oklahoma State. But I do, if it was me and I was on the committee, I'm probably putting Oklahoma in favor of Ole Miss and matching Oklahoma and Penn State against each other. That great Penn State defense versus an Oklahoma offense that can really put points on the board, and an Oklahoma defense that early in the season looked like it was much stingier than a year ago. So I don't think I'm not going to live in the world where I'm incredibly upset about it, John, because I think the bowl matchup, as we'll talk about here in a bit, is an exciting one for Oklahoma, but I get why the fan base is upset. And I do think, again, for me, if I was in the deciding portion of this conversation, OU's in over Ole Miss.
So I totally get where everybody's coming from with the Oklahoma Sooners have the best win of the four teams that we're talking about. It's clear as day. Oklahoma's win over Texas, it sits there far and above what anybody else has. At the same time, they've got worse losses compared to the other three teams. Let me just run down these three teams. We'll start with Missouri because that's everybody's favorite team to hate right now. They lost to LSU, number 13 at the time. They lost to Georgia, who turned out to be the number 16. LSU is currently the number 13 team. Georgia is now currently the number 16, but at the time they were the number 1 team in the nation. We go to Ole Miss. Ole Miss lost to who? Alabama. They also lost to Georgia. And then we go to Penn State. We know who they lost to because it's the same 2 teams they lose to pretty much every year. That's Ohio State and Michigan, 2 teams that are ranked above Oklahoma. So I'm not going to sit here and give the committee a complete pass because I don't know if they even considered all of that, because it just seemed like they just kind of gave up after they got through the first 6 teams and just went, oh, well, this is what they were, so let's just keep them as they were. Now, the committee doesn't get much of a pass from me, but I'm not so upset about it, especially when I consider that the 2 teams that Oklahoma lost to, Oklahoma's best win against Texas, Texas beat those 2 teams by a combined 54 points, and Oklahoma lost 1-score games. I'm very much about the context. I'm very much about, looking at all the situations and trying to get as much information as possible. But the reality is you lost to 2 teams. Kansas isn't ranked. Oklahoma State is, in the 20 to 25 range. This team just wasn't good enough. And for a lot of reasons, 6 turnovers in 2 games, 3 of those against Oklahoma State, straight up giveaways. Oklahoma State did not force those turnovers. You gave them the ball 3 times. And the Drake Stoops penalty, obviously that played a big factor into it, but your play wasn't good enough anyway. As much as I want to rail on the referees or talk about Jeff Levy, the execution wasn't what it needed to be in that game. And that's what kept you out of the Big 12 title game. That's what kept you out of a New Year's Six bowl. Ultimately, I think if you just lose to Kansas, but you beat Oklahoma State, obviously you're in the Big 12 title game and you're probably in a New Year's Six bowl, regardless of what happens against Texas. And you probably play the Big 12 championship game a lot closer than Oklahoma State did. I mean, that was a mismatch of the highest order, because what does Oklahoma State do really, really, really well? Run the ball. What does Texas do really, really well? As good as anybody in the country, they stop the run. And once they put the ball in Allen Bowman's hands, it was kind of all she wrote. But as far as Oklahoma's status in the Alamo Bowl, I kind of expected this. I mean, I do the bowl projections off of what USA Today does. I look at those every single week, and they were in the Alamo Bowl for weeks. I mean, since they lost to Oklahoma State, it was pretty much locked in. They were going to the Alamo Bowl. The only thing that was going to change was if they somehow made their way into the Big 12 title game, which was kind of an outside shot. So I'm not too surprised by this. I'm not even really that upset about it. It's one of those kind of notes you stick on the corkboard. Just got to be better. We've got to be better.
And the opponent is, even though you don't get into the New Year's Six, believe it or not, folks, I think this is going to be an exciting bowl game. I'm fired up about the opponent that Oklahoma draws. It's not your traditional power, a la Penn State. If you had gotten, say, the Peach Bowl ticket, that would have been, that would have been a heavyweight matchup, and I think fans would have been more receptive to that. I think OU should have been in. Again, I subscribe to you're your own worst enemy here, because you didn't play great defense coming down the home stretch. And as you pointed out, John, you probably had the worst losses. You did have the worst losses on the board out of the group of teams that we're talking about. I do think that, to me, what are we doing here? Is a win not more important than the losses, the quality losses? Like, to me, if I'm evaluating, the win is more important if most everything else is equal. But it's not something to get too bent out of shape about. By the way, we got, I think, an exciting Alamo Bowl matchup to discuss.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Arizona, the Wildcats. We'll give you our early thoughts on them coming up after the break. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as much information on the top-tier candidates that you can when you're going to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That's right, 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Josh, the Arizona Wildcats coming to San Antonio to play your Oklahoma Sooners. This is a really intriguing matchup, as you mentioned, Josh. The Wildcats, number 28 in the nation in scoring defense and number 23 in the nation in scoring offense. Why is that so important, so intriguing? Well, your Oklahoma Sooners are the number, in scoring defense? I did not highlight them. Number 42 in scoring defense, allowing 2 more points per game than Arizona, but also have the number 3 scoring offense in the nation. So potential for some fireworks or a pretty tight ball game between these two sides.
I would imagine there's going to be points scored is my early thought going into this one. Now we think, right? I mean, I don't know why Dillon Gabriel wouldn't play in the game. One final hurrah for Oklahoma, I would imagine, right? It would be, you can almost make the argument that Oklahoma might rather start Jackson Arnold in this game and get a little bit of a jump start on next season, but I don't think that's how it'll play out, right? And I don't think Dillon Gabriel, John, is wired that way. I think he'll want to finish what he started, quote unquote, with Oklahoma. And that means we've got an Arizona team that can put up a bunch of points. Obviously, Arizona State, probably nothing to ride home about, against the Sun Devils there. But they did put 59 up in that game and 42 before that against Utah. They've got a 44-point outing against Washington State. USC's defense, we know about that, but 3 overtimes, that was another 40 burger for them. You look at Arizona's schedule and, at the finish line here, you're saying, okay, well, if you were playing the other quarterback to begin with, maybe you don't lose to Mississippi State in overtime early in the year. But I just think the uniqueness of the matchup and actually the see you later Big 12 and hello Big 12 angle of this one is going to be kind of fun.
No, it is going to be kind of fun. Arizona is a team that's going to be joining the Big 12 next year as Oklahoma heads out the door. And, if you're just a fan of Big 12 football, then maybe this is going to be one of those that's intriguing. It's a matchup that's only been played twice in its history, back in 1988 and 1989. Who were the coaches? Well, 1988 was the last year with Barry Switzer at the helm. You got the win. And then 1989 was the first year of Gary Gibbs. You lose 6-3 in a good old defensive battle. So, I'm intrigued by, watching, Noah Fafita play. I mean, 73% passer. That's really, really impressive. 23 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. Is not much of a rushing threat, but, we've seen teams that had quarterbacks that weren't much of a rushing threat have, some success against Oklahoma. They seem to be an efficient offense, and that's kind of been Oklahoma's struggle a little bit at times, as they continue to kind of give up plays, and then make a play. They bend, don't break, but teams that are efficient, they can continue to move the ball, pick up first downs, they find some success against the Sooners, and Fafita provides a nice little challenge for them going out the door of the 2023 season.
It's an interesting little storyline attached to this too, that obviously Oklahoma, rare season downturn for its standards a year ago, right? First losing season in a quarter century. So that is unusual for Oklahoma. That would not be the norm. Less of the time you could say that about Arizona, right? A rough season in Arizona is not totally unexpected, but hey, this is a Wildcats team that is authoring one of the best turnarounds in college football, a la Oklahoma. So that's an interesting angle to this game too, that the Wildcats 5-7 a season ago, I think one of the best coaching jobs in all of America, probably not the best. I would tip my cap maybe to David Braun at Northwestern, would maybe get my ultimate vote there, but this is one of the good coaching jobs in college football, John, to turn this team from 5-7 a year ago. It looked like, I don't know how you're going to fix it, to now all of a sudden they're 9-3. They win 7 games in the final year of the Pac-12, and here they're going to meet Oklahoma. So it's two teams that obviously you got the Big 12, see you later, the Big 12, hello, but also you've got two teams kind of, easy Oklahoma fans, but on similar trajectories in the sense that, hey, last season wasn't great. This season, legitimate turnaround for both.
Yeah, and it's a team that comes from a conference that you've kind of been following a little bit closely too because of the USC Trojans a little bit. And it's the Pac-12's last season as constructed, the Big 12's last season with Oklahoma and Texas. So a lot of just odd and interesting, stories to follow. I think it's going to be fascinating to see, who ends up playing in this game for Oklahoma. You've got several veterans that could come back. You got several seniors who could go off to the NFL. I assume, guys like Tyler Guyton probably going to go to the go start getting ready for the NFL draft. I mean, he didn't start the final 3 games of the year, got plugged in that finale against TCU, but is it the Jacob Sexton show? Are we going to see a lot of the young guys get a lot of run? How is the coaching staff going to handle this? It's going to be our first opportunity to see either Seth Luttrell or Joe John Finley call plays. That's going to be really, really fun to see just what the future of this offense could potentially look like with those guys. Now, it could look a little bit disoriented. It might be the best way to put it because you're going from, a guy that's been calling the plays for the last 2 years to somebody who hasn't called the plays in a couple of years. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to this as well. Yeah, following the quarterback situation is going to be something that everybody's going to be following. Obviously, if Dylan Gabriel plays, that's great, but we'd also like to see some Jackson Arnold in this game, regardless of the circumstances or situation. I mean, it's time. It's time to start seeing what he's got. It's time to let him gain that experience against competition on the field so that come next September, it's not, this big step up. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, it's going to be a jump up from the Arizona Wildcats to the Tennessee Volunteers when they open SEC play, but you want to have as much Power 5 experience under Jackson Arnold's belt as possible before you get going.
It would be nice, right, if he could get some legitimate play time in this game, but we'll see. I mean, look, it's the end of the season and Oklahoma has to handle business for Oklahoma, but if Dylan Gabriel says, how about this? If Dylan Gabriel says, I want to start and play this game, you're Brent Venables. Are you, you're able, right? So that this is not a yes or no question, but because obviously Venables could, but what's your gut feel? Would Venables say, yes, it's your show for this game, or would he be willing to say, oh, hey, Dylan, thank you for everything, but oh, by the way, we're also going to play Jackson Arnold some in this game. Would he be willing to do that?
I think that if Gabriel came to him and said, I want to start and play, he'd be sure, we're going to run you. And they might have already had that conversation. Like Dylan Gabriel might have said, hey, I'm playing in the bowl game no matter what. And they might have had that. I think if there was something other than Dylan Gabriel's the starter for the bowl game, then we'd hear, hey, he's going to opt out or something like that. But I bet he is going to play. He's going to start. But again, it wouldn't surprise me to see them play Jackson Arnold some to get him that game, get him those game reps. And I think Dylan Gabriel would kind of understand that too. I think he would understand, like, this is a great opportunity to get Jackson some game reps. He's not so proud, I think, that he wouldn't step aside for a quarter or for several series in a game to let Jackson Arnold, a guy who he's got a good relationship with. Jackson Arnold and his parents, they talk about what a great guy Dylan Gabriel is and what the great relationship the two of them have together. Jackson Arnold's been nothing but a professional in this. He's come in, he's been willing to kind of be humble and take a back seat and sit and learn. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't maybe give him a couple series to run out there with the first team offense and just let him go to work a little bit. Let him get more and more experience so that he can build upon what he's already done so far. But I don't think Brent Venables would say thanks, but no thanks. If Dylan Gabriel wants to play, he's going to play. And if he's wanting to play, he's going to start in this game. Somebody we need to say thanks, but no thanks to, and that's that college football playoff committee. I don't even know. It's time to go back to the BCS. We'll talk more about that here after the break.
Today's episode brought to us by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook, the best place to get in on the NFL action while the going and the getting is still good. Because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers, they're still red hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Just $5 moneyline. You win. New customers, $150 tacked on there. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time than right now to get in on the action. They've got an app that's so easy to use with a wide range of betting options, just about anything you could think of, spreads, player props, over-unders, you name it. FanDuel.com/locked on to enjoy this NFL season. Just real quick, before we move on here, the opening number from FanDuel Sportsbook, it's out. Arizona, a 1.5 favorite, at least the opening number here right now from FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm maybe a little bit surprised by that. So if you like the value for Oklahoma, I would in this game. Now's the time to get in. 64.5, the over under right now, number for Arizona, Oklahoma. So going to be fun in the Alamo Bowl. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
The College Football Playoff Committee did the thing I didn't think that they'd be able to do, and that's leave Florida State out of the College Football Playoff. 13-0 ACC champion. Jordan Travis or not, this team continued to win, and I got a big beef with the College Football Playoff Committee. I don't care if you felt like they were deserving or not, or if they were the best team or not. They went out and won the games that were on their schedule. They beat LSU early in the season. Opening week of the season, they schedule LSU. They beat them. What more can you ask? To me, it does the game of football a disservice to say, oh, your quarterback's out. I'm sorry, we can't let you play. What if the BCS had a committee back in 2000 and they saw the way Oklahoma's offense finished the season after Josh Heupel's elbow injury and decided, oh man, that Oklahoma Sooners offense isn't the same now that Josh Heupel's injured? No, come on. You're kidding me. This is not the way that this is supposed to be done. I get Alabama's a great team. I get that Washington and Michigan and Texas all look really, really good. If we want to talk about the quote unquote best teams in the country, then why is Georgia not in the college football playoff? Why are we leaving them out? If we think that Florida State wasn't as good as Alabama, Florida State wasn't as good as Texas or Michigan or Washington, do we believe Michigan and Washington are better than Georgia? I don't think anybody can say that with a straight face. You can say maybe Texas is because they beat Bama. Maybe Bama is. I mean, Bama just beat Georgia. So, quote unquote, they are the better team. But if you're looking for the best teams, you can't say without a shadow of a doubt that Michigan and Washington are better than Georgia. So miss me with the idea that Florida State doesn't deserve to be in there because they're not a better team or because they, quote unquote, would get rolled by Michigan. This is the same thing we heard from people about TCU last year. TCU didn't deserve to be in it because they lost in the Big 12 title game. They weren't somebody that anybody thought to take seriously. They went into the college football playoff and they beat Michigan. Did they get rolled by Georgia? 100%. But they still beat Michigan. They won their game to get the national title. So I'm so tired of the Florida State didn't deserve to be there because they didn't have their quarterback. They've got NFL talent up and down that roster at wide receiver, on the defensive line, in the linebacker core. That is a really, really good football team. And football is a team sport. I know that the national media in the NFL, college football, people like us, they want to elevate the quarterback to this level of importance that outshines every other aspect of the game. But that completely misses the mark on what football is. Football at the NFL level takes 53 guys, an organization, to create a championship team. At the college football level, it takes how many guys on scholarship? Was it 90? Plus walk-ons, plus a coaching staff, plus a training staff, plus a recruiting staff, plus an administrative staff to all win football games. And Florida State won every single one of them on their schedule this year and deserved to be in the college football playoff. And I'm so excited that we're moving to 12 next year, Josh. And I know I'm taking a lot of time on this, but I'm just fired up about it because it bothers me. It bothers me. As somebody who believes in playing the game on the field and the games matter, as somebody who even believes that expansion is a good thing for a college football playoff, it just really bothers me that a team gets docked because of an injury. Something that nobody can control, that's a freak thing, that you're going to punish the rest of the Florida State Seminoles, Mike Norvell, the administration, the fans, the university, because of a freak broken bone, and then say that, okay, Florida State's not as good of a team anymore because, yeah, the quarterback got hurt. That might be true, but we'll never know because the College Football Playoff Committee didn't allow us to see the opportunity of Michigan versus Florida State. They robbed the college football fan an opportunity to see, could Florida State stay undefeated and go win a national title? But the College Football Playoff Committee said, nah, we know better. We're going to prognosticate. We're going to project out that this Florida State team can't beat anybody in the playoff. Baloney.
Did the College Football Playoff Committee get it right? No, the College Football Playoff Committee didn't get it right. If that's the question, the answer is no, according to how I think that this should work, right? Now, did the College Football Playoff Committee put the quote-unquote best teams, best matchups in right now, according to their conference champions, and they're the quote-unquote best teams on paper? Yes, the committee did that. Does that make it right? No, to me, it doesn't make it right. And I think we're having a debate about best teams on paper, right? And most deserving. And Florida State, alongside a couple of unbeatens in both Michigan and Washington, was one of the three most deserving teams this college football season. They went out and handled their business. If we were talking about, I think you mentioned this, but it's a key detail for Florida State. The injury, okay, obviously they considered that it was convenient for them to put in what were the best made for television matchups. But if this was a Florida State unbeaten team, John, that let's say played a non-conference schedule that even looked like Oklahoma's, which ultimately, because of what SMU didn't wind up being all that bad of a non-conference schedule. But let's say it was that, right? Let's say Florida State initially had basically just SMU as its best non-conference game on the slate. Then I think you could make a more reasonable debate for, okay, well, really you had two unbeaten conference teams in Alabama versus Florida State, and Florida State didn't challenge itself in the non-conference, and Alabama did. Okay, I would sit and hear that from anybody, right? But you've got a Florida State team that went out there, and was LSU Texas this season? No, they weren't. But who was LSU in the offseason? It was a trendy national championship contender to a lot of people. Who did LSU wind up as? Well, they wound up as maybe the team with the Heisman Trophy winner, right? Certainly a Heisman Trophy finalist. No doubt that Daniels will wind up as that. So I'm like you. I've got a tough time with the way this thing shook out. I love the SEC. I'm excited for Oklahoma to join the SEC. But to me, the SEC should have been sitting out of this thing because they played the games and Texas went and beat Alabama. So Alabama, unfortunately, had its chance and they didn't take care of business. I don't care how long ago it was early in the season. Texas beat Alabama. Texas, as the Big 12 champion, should have gotten in. Florida State, as an unbeaten team, should have gotten in. And those should have been your four. Would it have been the best made-for-TV matchups? No, but it would have been the right matchups according to most deserving, which to me, I just think that has a greater seat at the table versus, okay, here's some ambiguous criteria about let's put the four best teams in. Then why the hell are we playing this season?
That's exactly right. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning into the show and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Again, make us your first listen every single day. Stick around for Locked On Sports Today or the Locked On Sports Dallas 24/7 live streams that come up right after this show. Be here for our live show Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time here on YouTube. Also, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thank you again for making Locked On Sooners your team every day. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh on Ref, myself at John9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, on all the socials. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.